So for some reason, I can't hear the room.
Can you hear us now? Okay. Well, that's a yes.
Okay.
Yeah, let me move back.
So maybe just recap. I mean, you didn't do anything, but for people who couldn't hear you, maybe just recap what you did
We
last
were-
couple minutes.
There was no short reflection. We were having introductions, and Hannah, the new arborist, and Riley, assistant city planner, introduced themselves. And we will hear from the citizen comments later. The rest of us, I think, will all know each other. Adoption of the agenda. Did anyone besides me read the agenda? Riley sent it around with the, with the minutes. Oh, agendas first. So adoption of the agenda, which Riley sent around. I have some, just some additional things to add to it under old business. An update on Arbor Day and Green Fair planning. And Doug has some short presentation on tree canopy and inventory studies. And then under new business, I wanted to bring up some of the things that came up at my meeting with the council a couple of weeks ago. It's sort of, I think, Doug was there, or I'm sorry, Larry was there. I think it was an expression of their priorities. And I was glad to hear that. That'll give us some idea about what direction they would like to see the tree going. Okay. So with those additions to the details of the agenda, all in favor?
Somebody move to adopt it.
No, I didn't have it. Move to adopt it and do a second. Okay, all in favor of adopt the agenda. And the minutes, which Riley sent around with the agenda. Anyone move to adopt the minutes or to accept the minutes? Second. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda is citizen comments. Do we have comments from citizen participants, John or Mike? Mike.
Do I need to allow him to?
Yes.
Allowed to talk?
Howdy, Mike. Do you hear? Howdy.
Hello. Hi, Mike.
Howdy. I watched the presentation that you did with the council, and there were some references to the Heritage Tree Program. And I don't see a chat here where I could post the links, but there's a slideshow available on, if you're not aware, there's a slideshow for the Heritage Tree Program on the city website. And there's also a form that people used to use to fill out a nomination for the Heritage Tree Program. And then there's also a book at City Hall that has pictures that I think it might even be, it kind of moves around, but there's times it's at the front desk. But all right, that's it. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I have the slideshow and another document that I retrieved from the website, but I didn't know about the book of Heritage Trees. So we'll look for it. Mandy was going to take that on, so we'll talk to her about that. Thank you. Anything else, John? Mike?
Thanks, John. If you wanted to speak, just use the raise hand feature and then we'll allow you to.
Okay. If there's no further comments, thank you. Communications. Do you have any announcements or other short communications?
Sandy, did you want to say anything?
Nope, all good.
In my planning and communications too, and just briefly, we're gonna take advantage of social media and the newsletter to do that. To start off, we're gonna publicize the Arbor Day planting with social media posts, so I'll get to that in a minute. And then I remember from your comments or your email that the mayor was interested in IDJOURN.
He was interested in doing something to educate the public around removing items.
I've done a little bit of thinking about that, and that's something that we could build a campaign over the summer and do that in the fall, because that's the best time to get rid of it. Best time to take it. So that's kind of a tentative plan. The other, let's see, what else is going to say? Oh, the grain fair. We've got enough time.
Let's take these up. So I have those items, Arbor Day, be prepared, so under, I think communication is mostly just for announcements
Oh,
about things, either
Okay.
from the city or. That's all right, we'll be right to it anyway, so. Under any other communications? Are you subbing in, Hannah?
Yeah.
All right.
We're getting there. I have it all together and using that concept, but yeah.
I'm sure, you know, we do look forward to seeing tree removal permit reports at some point.
Yeah, I printed a whole list of the permitting software is just, there is not really any training guides on how to use it. And no one was using it all of last year. So it's just been kind of a sticky figuring out how to get the information from what I'm putting in. There is, I guess I have an update on that. There's a contractor can help us get updates to it. Because there was some stuff like percentages being minus from each other and just some weird things going on. And so I've updated it so that hopefully I'll be able to pull a report of just X amount of trees removed and X amount of trees required as the replanting. So I'll be able to show that to you guys. Hopefully by next week. But for now, I just printed off the description of all the ones that came in March. And it either shows that if they're submitted, that means they're still in review. And then obviously if they're approved, they've been issued.
You know, I noticed that the Public Utilities, Rubber has been working in Lake Forest Park a lot over the last month. Clearing trees around, branches around power lines. How closely do they coordinate with you or the city about that?
They coordinate with Public Works for their right of way permits mostly.
Old business, the first thing I had up, because it is the first thing coming up, is the Arbor Day event. And that is scheduled for Saturday, April 15th, which is a week from this Saturday. And we now have a site. Here is the aerial view of Horizon View Park. The little yellow circle is the location that's been selected. And the plan is to prep the site on Friday, dig a hole, get ready for planting, have the plant up there. My truck is back operating, so I think I can drive the tree up.
Go back to the trees.
Yeah, and we can be all ready to go Saturday. And I've been terrifically busy now that I'm back at work teaching, so hopeful. I'm sort of been looking at Marty, hoping that someone can help take some responsibility for getting this organized. I think I can be there, but I have to lead a field trip to the Arboretum that morning. So
So you're thinking after.
yeah, so I think what time we had put down on it was 1 o'clock. Do you remember the permit request that I had to put through? I think I sent around to all of you guys. 1 o'clock, starting 1 o'clock, ending 3 o'clock. I actually don't think it'll last that long, but that's what I put down. And who knows how many people will come, but if we can get some flyers out, get some information out, hopefully we'll have few people.
Let me clarify something. You said prep on Friday at 1 p.m. and then you're talking about
The event is on Saturday at 1 p.m.
Saturday.
The prep is going to be Friday afternoon, and I would like to have, somebody else who can help me with it.
What
I get
time?
And whenever we want to do it, I will be home from work Friday by 1. So anytime between then and dark, I can probably schedule. So, who wants to help out with that?
If you can.
Okay. It's
Just
mostly,
a matter of digging a hole.
it's a matter of digging a hole. I'll bring a tarp, we can put soil on a tarp so that we doesn't get on the grass, and I'll bring a bag of compost or something that we can mix with the soil. And Hannah, you reported to me a thing about getting reimbursement for expenses associated with that Arbor Day event. Is that something where I buy some things, I can just pay myself and then request the reimbursement, or is there a city budget, or how?
Well, I think I had asked you if there was anything you wanted to buy to like send me a.
Oh, I didn't.
Just because I have to ask Steve,
Okay.
when I asked him, there was no specific budget.
Yeah.
Give me, it was all bring me what they want to
Okay.
buy. So,
I will try to get that to you. I really, what I should do is get one of those bags.
Yeah.
That you can drip water bag, and I think we'll need to stake it. But you may have a better sense for that.
how big is the tree?
It's probably 10 or 12 feet tall, but not very big diameter. It's in a pot about this big around. So it's got a pretty good size.
You mind sending me a picture of the tree? And then I can give you some. Right?
All right.
What kind of tree is it?
It's a Star Action. Yeah, it's-
We did it through.
What for?
Through telephone.
Oh, yeah, right.
What's the company?
Japanese snowbell.
In Japan.
They are fabulous when they flower for about 2 weeks in June. They're just covered with white blossoms.
What do you need me to do? What do you need? You just help on Friday or
I
Saturday
think-
or what?
So I would like have somebody who would take responsibility for the PR.
Yeah.
And then organizing who can be there for Saturday. It would be nice if we could have the mayor or someone from the city council or someone representing the city who could say a word or two.
So an invitation to.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yeah. Larry, you may have a better sense than I about what's feasible with respect to that. It's starting to get to be short notice. I apologize. for that.
I would encourage you to invite everyone. So there's an email, it's like city council. I forget the exact format, but basically it sends an email to the full city council and the mayor and the city administrator all in one go. I would encourage you to use that to invite. I had intended to be there. Should be able to make it on. I guess I already have agreed. I get the mayor would be a bigger get if you want him to make a speech. I won't be insulted.
Yeah, well, I hope no one is too long-winded in any of that, but it would be nice to have somebody from the city to represent and, maybe someone from the tree board to say it.
How would I use that?
Yeah, is that, can anybody send to that city council?
But yeah, anyone of the public can. That's the main way that the public reaches out to everyone on the council all at once. If they have any concerns about really any matter.
Okay. So
Send
what
it
is,
to them.
I'll email you the.
okay, good, thanks.
So
Yes.
this is Sandy.
Go ahead.
So I will be, I can join Marty on Saturday.
Okay.
So, because I'll be there on Saturday. And then, did I hear that Hannah was going to send the email, or who's going to send that email? Yeah, okay, that was what I heard. Okay, cool. And then Mandy and I were going to work together on some social media to send out. And then, is Mandy in the room?
Yes,
No.
she's not here yet.
Oh, okay, okay. So Mandy has written some content and I was gonna help clean it up a little bit and provide some infographics to go with the social media posts so that we could advertise for the Arbor Day event. I think so I would like to forward to Mandy what that detail of how do we do that is. So Riley, do we submit the content through you or do we submit that?
Yeah, I think we were talking about best practice being anytime you want to post an article or social media, send it to me and Riley.
Okay,
Just
both of you.
how we can make sure that the information gets to the correct person in the city.
Okay, so both of you, perfect. And then related to that is we had discussed a print poster flyer to again advertise for the Arbor Day event to post. I don't know where, I'm not sure we said. Just in the short term logistics, do we do that?
We could probably put something in third place comments, but I don't know where else we want to post anything.
Right, I mean, it'd be one poster.
The part where we're going.
I don't know.
Right. So again, I can create the poster. It's fine. I can do the poster. I want to know about what the city's resources are for printing. It's only one page, I mean, it's a one poster. And then again, what is the formal process for that? Submitted to Riley and Hannah.
I
Okay.
believe that information for you.
Okay.
And get a few copies laminated, like you were saying, if you want to post it up at the park. We'll
Yeah.
just wanna make
Oh, the
that happen.
park. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so two.
And 8.5 by 11, you can laminate it. You can put one in Lakers, put one up in Horizon View, any place where people gather.
Okay,
You might see it.
okay. Well,
Dependent on
Yeah.
if it's raining, nobody's gonna show up.
There's a
yeah,
little kiosk, park has the wetland that, where they're doing a lot of restoration. 33rd. It's, as you go up 178, you turn off to the left, and it's over in there.
5 acres.
No, 5 acres up to 40. Somebody help me here. What's it? Yeah. And well, no, there's a kiosk at that park where you could put up a sign, I think, a popular place for people to go.
oh, the Eagle Park, Eagle? Something?
That's across from Animal Acres. Yeah, so that's right. there.
Oh, okay. So
Once the
2
fire
parks
dies,
from the town center, so 3 posters. I can go ahead and forward the poster as well as a recommended list for printing to Hannah and Riley, and then we're good? Okay, and then I just wanted to confirm, so the time is 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
Saturday, April the 22nd.
19. That's
Oh.
10 days now, so it's the 15th. 15th, that's right. 15th.
Oh, it's Saturday the 15th. Okay,
Coming right up. So it'd be good to get things posted by this weekend if we can.
okay. That was where I didn't have it right. Okay, so 1 o'clock, Saturday, April 15th.
I would encourage, there's the newsflash feature that LFP uses, so if you get language written up, I imagine that Hannah or Riley could make that a newsflash post.
Yeah, that would be great. That's the most urgent or quick turnaround.
In addition, other places to reach out, you might write a little blurb for the Shoreline Area News. They can post that as an article.
there enough time to do that?
And that's, I think, I think it's Anne's her name. I think she's pretty good. Yeah, if you were to write something, she'd be able to post it, probably within a day or two.
Does the city have a Facebook page and that sort of?
That's
Social
social media.
Say it's a social media post, I'll make sure we get it on the different platforms.
What's the timing for that? Do you need it so many days or hours in advance, or can we just submit it? Know when it'll be.
I'm only in on Mondays through Thursdays, so. That is mine.
So you're not gonna be available on Friday.
Well, that's why I said include Riley too.
Okay, I was thinking that it might be nice to have you up there when we are sighting the tree. That Friday afternoon before we plant.
We'll be here. It feels pretty, tight. You move it to Thursday, come.
Well, so I was just thinking that it might be, I mean, Thursday is the one day I don't have to be at the university typically. So maybe we could get together and go up there and, you know, stick in the ground and just take a look at the site. Because I don't want to go, you know, dig a hole to plant a tree and find out if it is what you or anyone, city authority might be best.
Did they have, did Public Works let you know if there's any like utility lines that are in that area? I'm assuming they checked for that.
I assume they checked and they didn't say anything. So, and that was the spot that they suggested.
Okay, I'll just double check with Jeff and make sure we don't need to call you.
I had one last question.
Go
So,
ahead.
I know it's a stretch, but does City of Lake Forest Park have a brand guide, and can I get it? So things like font color, font, image, actual image branding, background, watermark, etc.
I have some information Joanne has given me before, and I can pass that on to you.
Thank you. I would really appreciate it.
You got Friday, why don't we just get in touch and find a time it's gonna work?
Okay.
Weather, stuff like that, I think you've got my cell phone.
Yes.
One thing I have for you is your office, phone, so maybe
Okay.
email me sometime. Together.
Okay, so Doug and I'll handle the prep on Friday. Sounds like Sandy and Marty have things in hand for the PR along with Hannah and Riley. And Hannah, you send me the email address to reach the mayor and city council.
It's already in your phone.
Okay, and I will send a note and formal invitation to the city council and mayor to attend. Okay, anything else about Arbor Day? How about Arbor Day 2022? And do you want to say anything about the sort of the bind that we're in with that?
No.
Okay,
I'll provide an update once I hear back from the Department of Natural Resources.
okay. I'm hopeful.
So we're doing a really big deal this year that should make up for last year.
Well, we planted a lot of trees last year.
Yeah.
As part of the Mackler Creek restoration. So Julia provided some photos of the trees and volunteer planting trees. And we're hopeful that we can pass that off as an Arbor Day event.
Is this for like the Tree City program or is it something else?
I think so. And I didn't know anything about it.
So for what it's worth, the city council did do an official proclamation of Arbor Day last year. And I think that does count. I don't know if it's
That's part of
100%.
it. Yeah, they have that.
Okay. Well, the next thing I had in mind was on my agenda was the Green Fair, which comes up just 2 weeks after the Arbor Day. That's Saturday, the 29th. And sure how long, I think that's like 4 hours,
It's 10 to 2.
10 to 2. And so we have a table, 2 chairs, and we can bring props, or if a sign can be made that we can hang on the front of the table or something would be good. Or prop up on a piece of foam core maybe on the top of the table so that it doesn't get hidden by people walking by on the front of the table. And I think my idea was just man it and have somebody who can answer questions. Try to talk people into joining the board, whatever we can do. But I'm concerned about having enough people to be there because I'm away for a full day field trip that day. So I can't be there. Seems to me when I put out a call, the 2 of you said you could be there. Is that where Sandy's one of them? Were you the other, Marty?
Maybe.
Andy is going to be recovering from surgery or something that day. Are you available on?
I should be, yeah, I don't feel like I can't. But I believe is that Hannah can work it somehow for schedule to work Saturday instead of Thursday or something like that. I don't know if that's get paid overtime or something like that. Because I think having Hannah there would be
That would be
3 times as good as any of the rest of us.
Virtually, my personal life does not allow me to work on weekends.
I did speak with Julia Bent, actually just before I came to this meeting because I was concerned about this. And she said she might be able to help out. So I said that whoever is taking the lead on getting a schedule together for that would contact her. And I get one of you 3 to take the lead on sort of setting up a schedule for that.
Sandy, thoughts?
No, I can attend.
That the table will be there for us. I've done this event once, I think previously with a tree board, and 3 or 4 times for Santa Garden. And you just show up.
Yeah.
And if you have something to display, that's great.
Done it with Master Gardeners too. I can help gather materials, but I can't guarantee I can be here.
Okay.
Hannah, I wanted to ask you, I understood, we talked about this, I think for the last Green Fair amongst the board, and there are some materials somewhere that we've had on tables, like for events like this. How can we access those for this event? Just,
I can give you, like, there's like a little ISA Trees Are Good pamphlet organizer that has information in it. So you guys can have that, and then I can print off for the 1-page flyers. We don't have an extensive amount of the brochures left. But there'll be plenty. We have an Arbor Day flag set up behind the booth.
Oh, good.
So,
and
and
then,
that's, would you want me to give that to you now, or do you want to just come by the city hall and grab it from me sometime?
I can get it beforehand. I'll get in touch with you and I'll go pick it up probably that week.
Perfect.
And then 2 other thoughts that I had about stuff we could put out. One is that Sandy designed a graphic that we could, the infographic is on one side, and then we could create some content on the other side that talks more about what tree board does. And then I was also thinking that's something that could be printed either as a bookmark or a postcard or something like that. The other thing was that I was thinking we could do a half-page summary recruiting paragraph saying, how would you like to join the tree board? You know, print it 12 on a page, cut it in half, and just stack them out. That's great.
I think it would be great.
I actually took that part, Marty, one step farther, and I dug up the, oh, you can't see it. I dug up the spring of 2022 call out in the LFP Times for tree board
great.
members. So I have that paragraph ready to go. So all we would need to do, of course, is modernize the details, like the emails incorrect and things like that. But the content's all set. So putting it on a postcard One side being the content that we had for introduction to the tree board from the letter that we also did last year. So we have the content that says, here's introduction to the tree board on one side. And then on the other side is, hey, join us with content. And then I did actually have a follow-up question. Do we want, I don't know, again, do we want to actually make it into a mailable postcard that has the address section so that we can use that print material again to mail out to people, constituents?
I don't know, do you see a need for that? I don't know that the mass mailing would get us much.
That's for tree board
Yeah,
recruitment.
yeah. I'd rather put it someplace, like maybe put it out on the board that's out by the front door here. So people can pick it up and say, come in and sit.
There is something almost every month, the mayor saying we need the tree board and all the other.
Right, right.
We're not the only board of commission that's organized right now in the city.
We had Mandy for a few minutes, we lost her.
Yeah,
Actually, on that, I just wanted to finish up and say, in that case, would recommend, I will be working on a 1/3 size page trifold, but 1/3 of it, so that it can be slotted into those little holders as well as inserted into mailers. Because postcards are too wide. So thank you, Mandy. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Andy. Glad you could make it.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry to say I won't be able to be here the whole time either, but I might be able to like do the thing to have a quorum where I can turn off my video and we'll kind of let it run for a little bit, but
Well, I just want to step back to one thing we covered was the Arbor Day event, which is coming up on Saturday, April 15th.
okay, yep.
1 o'clock in the afternoon up at Horizon View Park.
At
And
one.
it would be nice if all 3 board members can make it who
Oh,
are
yeah.
available. So,
Perfect.
And Doug and I are going to do the prep for that tree planting on Friday afternoon. If you want to be involved with that, digging holes and getting soil ready.
Yeah, I would love to. I'll have my toddler, so I don't know how helpful she'll be, but
I will include you in the email when we
Yes.
set it.
perfect, great.
And then the Green Fair is the 29th, but I think you said that you would probably not be able to make that.
Yeah, I'm a maybe. I hope to be there, but I won't. I don't know how I'll feel, so I just don't want to commit and then be in trouble. But
I think Marty is going to try to coordinate that at any rate, whether she could be there or not. It's 4 hours. If we had people who could spend 1 or 2 hour shifts, that would be great. And so
Okay.
you could just put in an hour at the desk, at the table. We would appreciate it.
yeah, I will. I mean, again, I will if I can. So I will just touch base with Marty after to see how mobile I am.
Okay, you're probably not gonna really know until then, are you? If you're recovering.
Exactly. Right. So I'll just see how we're going.
Well, we'll try to fill the schedule without you, and if you could join, that would be
Perfect.
great. Okay.
Before we proceed further, John Brew has just emailed me saying that we can get the tree board Arbor Day event on the Stewardship Foundation's thing.
Oh, good. Thank you, John.
If which I will do once everyone.
So once we email you what we want to post, then you can forward that to John.
Yeah.
Okay. Green Fair. Anything else? Hannah's going to provide us with some brochures and material that we can display and hand out. Marty's going to coordinate trying to get a schedule together for people who could be there, and contact Julia. And I think she will be willing to try. She's fluid. this last week, was the last day of radiation treatment. And she seems like she's doing pretty well.
I have one last question. I'm not sure if I couldn't hear it or if we didn't mention it, but what time is the Green Fair?
10 to 2,
10 to 2.
10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Okay, 10 to 2. Thank you.
But it would be good for whoever's at the table first to get there a half an hour early, maybe, because there's somebody from the city will be going around, making sure everybody's at the table that knows where their table is, and helping get things set up. And they have been very good about that. My past experience.
What, do we get a table and a couple chairs?
Table and a couple of chairs, I think is the main.
Anything else like a table cover?
It's not tough, yeah. Okay. Anything else about Green Fair? All right. Well, then the next thing I had on the agenda was for Doug's presentation about the canopy study and inventory. Do you want to take it away?
Sure. Can you put the
Yeah,
slideshow up?
I'm not sure how to get it onto the Zoom.
Can you just do share screen? Do you have the Zoom control on?
If you join from your computer, join the Zoom thing, you can share your screen. And then it would go up there. And you can just like that, present to the room, so then it's just big on everyone's screen.
Okay.
Who is the host of the Zoom screen as it is right now?
It's like the IT account for.
Is there a place on that screen where you can plug in Doug's thumb
Yeah,
drive?
there
They
is.
probably don't want people plugging in USBs just as a tech
Yeah.
security thing. I think, yeah, if Riley logs in and then, in fact, you might need to make him a co-host, but then you can share.
Yeah, and like,
So Hannah, I will be in touch with you about meeting up sometime on that Thursday. I looked at my schedule. I have something, I have to be in Linwood at 3 in the afternoon, so maybe we could go midday or sometime around that on Thursday. Okay.
All right, so that's
That's the 13th. Oh, Friday the 13th comes on Thursday then.
okay, I'm joining. I'm gonna mute.
Do you have share access or do you need to be promoted to analyst or co-host?
I don't even know. Okay.
Well, you're listed under. If you need to, I can make you a co-host if you need that.
Let's do that. And- Okay. Here's
There we go.
you can start here. Yeah, what's the?
But the thing about it is it's not.
Oh, yeah, that's there.
Anyway, so we've talked about the tree inventory and canopy studies, and I thought it might be useful to sort of briefly summarize what they are. Everybody has some idea. First one I want to talk about is a tree inventory, sometimes called an I-tree analysis, somewhat inaccurately. And this is actually based on an on-the-ground study of individual plots. The first time this was done is 2010, 2011, I think. And we're repeating it right now, as soon as all these leaves come out. So the way this inventory was done last time, and it'll be done again this time. Whoever's doing the inventory picks a random spot, which can be in the forest, it can be in somebody's yard, 3 of them at least around Lake Washington, but within the township. Sets the point, that's the red point there. And then this goes out and measures the diameter, species, height, and a whole bunch of other stuff for any tree that's inside a critical circle. And the critical, if you're doing a 20th acre plot, it's been 26 feet. If you're doing a 10th acre plot, it's 37 feet. So it's really quick on the ground, especially now that you can do the distances with lasers. We used to have to do it by pulling a tape onto each tree. and seeing if it was in. I've actually never done it with lasers, but I can't imagine it isn't a lot easier. So then you get this, I think for the last tree inventory, this was done on 115 plots. And you then basically take that information and blow it up the whole city. And next slide. This is a page out of the report, and it gives you some information. I think everybody can read that. The trees we have, though, how big they are, and so forth. We can then take the actual raw data from that. I take the raw data and actually look at stuff in more detail. It isn't necessarily in the report they sent us, but this data is all publicly available. I just wanted to see what the size distribution of the trees were. As you can see, for the city as a whole, most of the trees, a very slight majority, are less than 5 inches in diameter. A few 5 to 10, and fewer other size classes. For red alder, Dick's favorite tree, it's even more concentrated towards small trees. For Douglas fir, it's much more concentrated toward larger trees. They tend to be older. They're probably not planted by the people who currently own the property, people who owned it before. So this is all pretty well directly taken from the data. You can also plug the data into a program called iTree, which is a product of, and you may know more about this than I do, but it's a product of the U.S. Forest Service done with in collaboration with a whole bunch of other people. It's a huge program, I think. But basically, it has a whole bunch of equations saying if you've got a 7-inch Douglas fir, I don't know what it takes into account. Probably the height, maybe the climate, possibly the soil. Anyway, you plug this stuff into the equations in iTree, and it gives you a whole bunch of other predictions. Next slide. So the top ones here are pretty much straightforward. The bottom ones, though, are calculations that are based on these equations, which, as someone who's built equations like that, I have some confidence in them. They're probably as good as anybody's going to do, because a lot of times we put it in iTree. So, but anyway, we get this kind of estimates for what the trees in Lake Forest Park are doing for us. Something I learned, though, as I was doing this, next slide, is that the estimates are really not very precise. They say 249,000, but the 95% confidence interval is from 175,000 to 325,000. And this is not something they did wrong. It's just that cities are so variable. I was going out in my yard. I have 14 trees in my yard. My neighbor has not. She doesn't like trees. I like trees. And any plot is going to hit one or the other of those. You get very different results. And even though you've got 115 plots, there's just a huge variability in the results. So we are not realistically going to be able to look at this 2022, 2023 analysis and just compare the results of, say, the iTree analysis. And it's bound to be within the margin of error of both of them. One thing that makes that sort of okay, if you can go back to the previous one. Riley. You can't, it's okay, but if you can. You're okay. Yeah, that's right. So we say we have 2,000 tons of carbon sequestration a year. That could be as low as 1,000 tons, might be as high as 3,000 tons. But that's the ballpark. It's in the thousands of tons range. The carbon storage is in the 50,000 ton range, maybe 75, maybe 25. Pollution removal, 35 tons a year, maybe 20, maybe 50. For these things, if you're talking about what the trees are doing for the city, the numbers aren't precise, but they give you an idea of how important they are.
What are the dollar values mean?
You might be able to look at the report and find out. The report is 12 pages long, so it probably says something
I
about
get
that.
the energy savings number, but I'm not sure what.
I don't have any idea. I just copied this page. This page is copied directly out of the iTree report.
It seems to me that recently the state had its first carbon auction through the cap and trade. So that essentially puts a price on carbon emissions, which we could then, if iTree tells us, how many tons of CO2 were prevented, then now the state has effectively a price on it. So it seems like we can generate that number.
Now these reports are 10-year-old numbers. I have no idea how they did put the values on it back then. Anyway, so those are not particularly precise, but they give an idea of what the trees are doing for us. some of the numbers I care about, the ones we're gonna use about size distribution are, I think, a great deal better. My calculation, I'm not much of a statistician, but my calculation is that, for example, we have the mean diameter dug for 16.5 inches plus or minus 1.6. So if we tell the council that 3% of the dug trees are over 30 centimeters or over 30 inches in diameter, it might be 2.8%, it might be 3.5, but we're not gonna be off by far. And the final thing is sort of a nice thing, oops, not quite finished yet. Yeah. The final thing, we have asked them to reanalyze the old plots as much as possible. They've had, we all know, a lot of difficulty getting permission to reanalyze them. Apparently they had a fair bit of difficulty the first time around. When I looked at the data set, there's quite a few plots are saying access denied on the original thing, and they just did it from the street in many cases, which I have no idea how accurate that is. But if we can actually compare plots in 2022 to plots that were measured in 2011, that will be a much more accurate way of determining how our trees are growing. It wouldn't tell us much about the city as a whole, but a few selected areas of the city will have a pretty good handle on just how much growth is occurring. Okay, so that's the tree inventory. The other study, which is entirely different, is what we call a canopy study, which is based on aerial data. The first study was done, LiDAR was done in 2015, 2005, the report was done in 2009. It takes a while to get somebody to analyze it. Same for the second study. We have not contracted for a third study yet, but there is new LiDAR data available as of 2021. So if the council sees fit, I think it actually says in the code they're supposed to do it every 5 years. So, I mean, that's a possibility for the future. Next one. Okay, so LiDAR is a variation on radar. It basically uses light pulses instead of radio waves. And a plane flies over and it emits an incredible number of flashes of light. They aim basically eight flashes of light toward each square meter. Not all of them hit the top of the trees, some of them hit the ground, some of them hit layers in between. But there's so many points that you're getting a really, really detailed map of, in this case, the canopy surface, the first thing that the light hits when it comes back. And so this sort of shows the results of the LiDAR flight. This is more than this Lake Forest Park. It is, sort of show the general area.
So what is the scale here? What are we looking at? What is our landmark? Is that Lake Washington?
This is-
Washington, yeah.
This is 145th Street. Here's Lake Washington. Here is Ballinger.
It's not much longer. It's not much more than polar.
So is the hotter the color, the
Higher.
greater the density?
Just the higher.
The higher it is off the elevation.
Yeah, that I don't actually know, but I'm pretty sure it must be just simply the higher off of lake level, sea level.
Okay, because it does look like it's more or less elevation that we're seeing there.
It is, yeah.
As we move away from
But you
the
can
lake.
see there, for example, I think that's a cemetery there that's sort of down in the middle of the red. There's a spot there where the canopy is lower.
Yeah.
So, and there's a few other places that you probably find town center. Yeah, you can see town center actually if you look right in the middle of the blue.
Yeah, so like here's I-5, so Ballinger's coming down here, so here's town center.
So anyway, this is one of the layers of the study. And this is again, just a study of the highest thing that the light group expects in. Next one. They can then take the same data and by seeing the last thing light is longest reflection time, make a map of the surface area, surface of the ground. So this is a digital elevation map or a digital terrain map or something like that. So that shows where the bottom, what the trees are sitting on. Next one. And then you subtract the digital elevation map from the canopy map, and you can tell how high the canopy is at basically every square meter in the entire city. They then go through and they use some kind of a color-based system. I think this is satellite-based actually, but it could be part of the LiDAR, I'm not sure. But they basically take out buildings. So you aren't saying, yeah, the canopy height of that big square there is so many meters. And then they simply say, okay, anywhere where the canopy surface is 16 feet above the ground surface, that's forested, or that's trees. Okay, so next picture. This is just a slight bit of a blow up of the The previous one, that's Ballinger Way, sinks off the left there, and that street that forks off Ballinger Way,
40th place.
40th place, right? And that's, I think that's 5 acre park up there. Anyway,
Yeah. So our
This
house
is-
is in top center, just down a little bit from the top of that view.
one of the big green spots.
It is. It's a pretty big green spot.
But this is kind of the size scale that you got for them. They then produce, this is a map of the entire city. Yellow is where they recognize forest canopies, meaning this thing up here is their statistics, their summary statistics. This tree canopy percentage varies a little from report to report, but it's between 48 and 50%. And in any given report, it's pretty precise. So I'm not quite sure why it's different things in different parts of the report. Next one. They also produce this down to each individual lot. This is a really sharp picture online. It's not so good here, but you can actually see the canopy coverage of any given lot here. That's an area around my house. The next one. And also is actually in a spreadsheet, which is many, many lines and quite a few columns. And next one. And they then use it to make maps like this showing, where are the lots that are heavily treed, moderately heavily treed, really not treed at all. And you can see town center, of course, there. I guess the cemetery where they were showing a little bit of trees, which is why. Anyway, produce maps like this to show you where the trees are. The next one. And this just shows how the forested areas relate to our critical areas. If you look at this closely, it shows that we've really done quite a good job maintaining forests and wetlands, erosion areas, and 100-year floodplains. And again, these things are, I think they're probably all available online. Okay, so just to step back one more, I'm sorry. Now, the numbers here, because they're basically doing the same thing over and over again, it is basically exactly the same thing in 2016 as they did in 2005 and 2016. They're doing the same thing. These things are really repeated. They give the canopy coverage to a 1/10 of a percent. That's probably not far off. A few weeks ago in the Times, there was an article about the city of Seattle had done the same thing. And they were pointing out there was a 0.3% change in the canopy over the city. And they thought that was worth writing an article about in the Times. So they at least feel that these numbers are really quite precise. So the results of this study were that between first study, I think, was 2005, and the second one was 2016. There was a 4% increase in canopy from 45.5 to 49.5 or something like that. That probably reflects a real 4% increase in canopy coverage. So it's not unlike the previous one where they said, well, yeah, 10 years ago we said there were 249,000 trees. This year we think it's 260,000.
But the error
That'd be a joke.
big, yeah.
That here, 45% to 49% is probably a real increase.
This doesn't rely on sampling and statistical.
No sampling, no statistics. I mean, there's probably some stuff here, I don't know, but it's not sampling. It's just the same thing remeasured
I'd like to
with the same technique.
look closely at one thing. So we had been talking about the neighborhood tree planting thing, and this is the neighborhood right up here that I was thinking we might target first for a neighborhood tree planting program. Because it tends to be small lots. I think it's, there's lower canopy on a lot of those lots than in much of the rest of the area. This area over here is something that's a little surprising to me. I don't know that area very
So
well.
for people at home, those two areas, one was kind of the northwest corner around like 205th Street, 30th Avenue. The other was the northeast, kind of like northeast of Horizon View Park.
Or due east of Horizon View Park.
And the other area that we talked about, I talked about, is the bottom part, the south part there.
Down in here,
that's another area that's
away from the lake a little bit.
Yeah, not toward the lake, because there you get confused. But middle there, which is on top of the hill.
And that's, again, for people, that's kind of around like the Briarcrest Elementary neighborhood.
And at Northeast Corner, there's, if I got this right, there's a old Aldercrest is there, there's a huge playfield.
And I think that's actually the city's shoreline.
Oh, is it? Okay.
And
Yeah, 'cause
that's,
that's off 25th.
yeah, it's in that inset that, there. And, but even in the Lake Forest Park side of that, it's noticeably less tree canopy.
That is surprising, because I walk there all the time, there's trees over there.
Yeah, but it's a lot of people's homes where the whole front yard is empty, trees and grass and stuff. And I think, people would, if given the option to have a tree given to them, and with some information about planting, might be embrace the idea.
I think this figure here is really useful for the work we do, and again, part of the reason, sort of, let people understand where this came from. The next two slides down, I guess. Okay, so just to summarize, the inventory provides a lot of data on species composition, tree sizes, and all sorts of environmental attributes. They're not very accurate, but there's all sorts of different kind of things they can tell you. But you can't really compare one certain inventory to the next to get much evidence about changes that are occurring. The analysis of remeasured plots, this is really the kind of thing nobody's done before. Nobody be talking about it, they've done that, foresters do it all the time. But on a city basis, I don't think, you know anything, Hannah, about people remeasuring plots in the city? Yeah, so.
Not very common.
So it's gonna be great fun, and we probably need to make sure the watershed company appreciates the first part of this, the error in their normal sampling, see just how important the analysis is. And even if we only have to remeasure a third of the plots, but that'll give us all sorts of information we don't have. This is kind of the wild card to me in the whole thing, but it's something that could be really fun. The canopy studies, they only provide one kind of data, if these are forested or not. But it's the entire city, it's not a sample, and their measurements are really very precise. So they're really good for tracking what we're doing.
So the numbers 1 and 3 are what we're doing.
Right.
Number 2 is what you're saying,
So that,
could be valuable and could be pulled out of the inventory study.
yes, but hasn't been done before, but we have asked the watershed company to do it. But it's difficult to say what they're gonna come up with. They're gonna have to just sort of go on their own, and hopefully they're good people. They seem to be, they have really good people.
So one of the things that we would get out of that is how much, for example, mass is actually being added to individual trees.
It will be a much better estimate of that than they're getting from the eye tree.
And it's being done on random plots because that is necessary for statistical extrapolation to the whole city.
Right.
But how would it be valuable for the future to find some tree stands that are on city property or on private property, but owned by owners who are willing to commit to long-term resampling, and just get some plots that we could resample on 5 or 10 year intervals going forward, that we wouldn't have to rely on homeowner.
Well, you can't really commit yourself to the next generation. I mean, houses turn over more than every 10 years. There are some of those points in city parks, but some of those points are in city parks. I figure it out if I look at the plot data. I mean, we have the spreadsheets. Those can certainly be redone.
But I'm saying, how would there be value in identifying plots that are non-randomly selected? Just because we could get some precise resampling at intervals that would give us some estimates about how fast the trees growing, how much biomass is being added or carbon sequestered in.
I don't know.
Based on
I don't know
size.
how useful that would be to make estimates for the city. Because it really makes a difference if you get in our valleys that are forested for good reason, or in the sort of flatlands where whatever is planted has been planted since the last people did. And extrapolating non-randomly selected plots up to the reason those areas are parks, they're usually parks for good reason. And so they're not going to be the same as everybody else. But throwing in a dozen or so plots, simply subject to being parks as long as they're out there measuring. So maybe, or we can do that, or I can do that. You could, I do, I can do it with a piece of string. 26.3 foot
really interesting. I mean, I had only a dim understanding of exactly what. Any other questions or comments for Doug?
It might be more of a question for Hannah and Riley. Would it be possible for you to give a very quick update on how the current tree inventory is going?
Yeah, I just had a meeting with Drew and Kim on Friday. Drew has moved to the East Coast and is no longer with Watershed Company. We still have the same team that's actually doing on the ground sampling of the trees. And Drew's boss, Kim, is now going to be the lead on our project. So she knows everything that's going on, and I have full confidence that she'll be able to execute all the things that are in the contract. We're still waiting to hear back from a lot of people. The mailer I sent out was not as effective as the envelope. I heard back from maybe 20% of the people. So we're going to be doing, well, the Watershed Company is going to be doing some more outreach and going and knocking on doors. So.
Drew was that person who gave us a presentation.
Yeah.
That's good.
And it sounds like he might still be doing some of the statistical analysis and some of the report writing. If he has not found a new job by then, so.
So he left for personal reasons, not for the job.
His wife got a job in Boston at the Arboretum.
At the Arboretum?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. The
So,
director is a good person.
oh, cool. Yeah, so it's too good of an opportunity for them to not have fun.
There were three people who did the presentation to us. I can't recall who they were. One seemed like sort of senior management, and the other two looked like the ones who were going to actually do the work. Do you have that who they were?
Yeah, so Kim was part of that, and so she's the main lead on our project now. And I think maybe Lars, I don't remember the main person who's actually going out and doing all the field work, but that team is big.
Yeah, I'm guessing the guy who seemed to be sort of senior manager was one who. I just remember one of them was a T-Wage graduate and had a lot of professors like you.
Okay.
They're probably the one who stayed down leading it.
That was true. That's maybe there.
Thanks. Anything else? Inventory or Jan's studies? We still have Sandy and Mandy.
I believe so, yeah.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
If you guys have any questions on that or.
All right. So that was all I had for old business. Under new business, I had that list that I sent out to all of you about my notes on the morning after the presentation of council. I would just say that I was very favorably impressed by the council's attention and the fact that they're following what we're doing and had really interesting questions. They were engaged. I guess I shouldn't be surprised at that, but so I just wanted to go through a few of them because some of them, for example, the mayor said, well, he was really keen on the educating the public about ivy removal, and even went so far as to say he thought he could come up with some money if we needed to print something that we could send out to homeowners about that. He was also keen on the plan that we had been kicking around to prepare a letter to homeowners that would go out about the value of trees, the tree canopy, and the code, what it means to homeowners. And that's something that Marty had already prepared a draft of that had been circulated at one point. And I think it would be good for us to pick that up again. And then also do something about ivy. He said he liked the idea of having the two of them go out with water bills or with whatever failing that the city might be able to stick that in.
Water bills not necessarily the best way to make people happy.
Right, that may be, but I think that his point was that if you could go out with something that is already, being mailed out, it would be a way to reach the public without having the expense of. He had two things in mind. He had the letter to homeowners about trees. Yeah. And the other was something specifically about removing ivy and the damage that ivy can cause to our forest canopy and environment in general. And engaging or educating the public about the problems of English ivy might help engage or encourage people to take action.
Yeah, that's something we could develop as we start to work on this campaign, and that could go out with, like July or August, June.
Yeah.
No matter water bills. So we could work.
Quick thought, we might want sewer, so water is not the city.
Okay.
And there's actually 4 different water agencies that serve Lake Forest Park, whareas sewage is citywide.
Okay, so I didn't know exactly what it was that he had suggested it was, but whatever would be the way to go. Maybe Riley and Hannah figure out or get somebody to help us give us. Best way to distribute something like this. We can come up with content. Here we distribute.
We get a paper mailing, I guess once a quarter from the city, it's sort of the quarterly newsletter.
We can definitely put stuff in there, but I communicated with Joanne Trudell a couple times this past week, and those have to be kind of short because it is print newsletter and there's not much space. But we can point people to other things, like go look at our website or go look at the Facebook page.
It would be nice to have something that would be, say, 1 8.5 by 11, maybe threefold. That would have information about the value of trees, the tree ordinance, and why homeowners are responsible for the trees before farming should be. And another one maybe about ivy. Those would be 2 discrete things that we could do.
Could be mailed and sort of stapled together with the thing that goes with the quarterly thing. 2-page thing, well, ivy on one side, trees on the other.
Yeah, something like
I
that.
mean, as long as you're taking postage, you get 2 pieces of paper instead of one out. I think it's better than putting it in the sewage bill. Or whatever.
Well, one
Yeah.
idea too would be to follow up on what Doug's saying. And instead of having a single booklet of information, we send out a series that looks like the same thing with a little bit more content on each in a smaller, more digestible format. So yeah, maybe some of them get inserted, some of them are mailed as a postcard, some of them are a folded brochure, whatever. But if there's a consistency to the message and it's repeated, we might hit a broader audience.
Well, you sound like you think about the strategy, Sandy, then that would be a good thing to have somebody coordinating this sort of activity, working with somebody who can help with the content. Like Marty has already put together.
Right. Yeah, I was just kind of playing off what Doug had said, and I think Marty and I have talked about it. So Marty's going to come up with the content, and then we'll slice and dice it on how to deliver it. Yeah.
One of the other things that came up.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
It seems to be I'm not quite sure how ivy is a tree board responsibility. Or at least, I don't think it's any more our responsibility than it is the park. So I think we ought to place that ivy on the ground, special concern, is in the parks.
Yeah.
And by the parks, I think I'm thinking about the Brookfield one. Because all the trees along the side of it have ivy, I actually walk in the Brookfield, and I see all that ivy all the time. But you were saying that ivy only flowers when it gets up on the tree or gets
Yeah.
up up.
When it grows vertically, it's when it flowers.
So
When it's growing on the ground, it doesn't.
So anything we can do to get it off trees, even if it stays in the ground, will help the ground. But I do think it's a parks board responsibility too. It's,
Yeah. Well, that's true. It would be nice to have this be more of a be an inter-board activity. It is a tree issue insofar as the added weight that ivy adds to canopies makes tree falling or higher likelihood in storms. I think that's the biggest risk to trees from ivy. The ivy itself doesn't kill the trees by choking it off or crowding it out or anything like that. What it does do is, though, when it grows up, it creates fruits that birds disperse, and that's how it spreads to new areas.
Right. Reduce the vector, like getting it off the trees, even if you can't get it off the ground.
So those are the sorts of things I think we could explore in a brochure that we can hand out, describe to community.
You might also be able to get some, volunteer Saturdays for people to go out in the bird field or go out to one of the parks. I don't know which parks that they got you from.
Well, the 5 Acre Woods has regular ivy removal programs. I walk down there almost every week. There's a huge pile of ivy out by the road to be hauled off. And so that's actively underway, but that's 5 acres that is completely covered with ivy. And they've got, in the first year or two, they got it all off the trees, although it's starting to creep back up. And since then, they've been trying to get it off the ground.
Really, like this comes up in my yard. Do they actually get it off the trees or just kill one of the trees? And let
They
it
cut
die?
it off and let it die, that tree, because there's no way to get it down when it's 100 feet.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, that's really much so. Trees along the brook, all you want to do is kill the ivy. You can do it today.
But the idea also for people who remove it from trees, the hard part is not cutting the stems, it's getting it back out of the ground near the base. We have these big, thick stems, and the goal is to uproot them and get them away from the tree, or else they will resprout and recolonize quickly.
It's a much closer to the insoluble problem.
And getting it off the ground, if you walk through 5 Acre Woods areas that they removed ivy from the ground 2 or 3 years ago, it's now coming back because they inevitably have to. It's impossible to get all of the roots underground.
In my backyard, there are ivy like that. Size of my car, so yeah, they're hard to get out. They're not going to get out.
Okay, so that's one action item that the mayor specifically mentioned. Tom French, who is the deputy mayor, is that his title? He noted that LFP has over 28 acres. He referred to it as unheralded property. Is that a technical term? You told Harry. I think that means property that belongs to the city that isn't officially part of any park or city hall or whatever else. And he indicated that might include acreage that could be used for tree planting. He said some of it is simply managed, overgrown with ivy or early successional woody plants and things like that. And so that, yeah, so Riley and Hannah, Tom said he'd be glad to get us the information. Would you contact him and see if he can send you a list of parcels or locations where?
If you go to King County IMAP, you can see all, you can find that.
Somebody directed me to that one time. I spent some time on it and I just couldn't figure out how to.
There's layer lists, and in each layer, so you have them for like critical areas, and then you can expand that, and it shows you all of them, and so you can select which ones you want to show up on the layers.
How hard would it be for someone like yourself who knows how to use it to create a map for the city that has those parcels identified?
The Public Works Director, Jeff, just recently sent me a PDF of that. So I'll pull that and I can try to send it to you.
What would the layer be called on Joe property or something like that? I mean, what would I look for?
struck me as it being colorful.
Yeah,
Saying that
I don't think that's a,
it's public property that is unloved, like, because we don't realize that it's city owned and nothing's being done with it.
Yeah, that's her, what I get.
Yeah, I'd
I
like
had not heard that term before, so I wondered if it was. Had something.
unlawful more talking about the city.
But that parcel that someone told us about.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we met,
Right.
right at that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but we're just, you can pull out the city properties. I've looked at that program a little bit, but never tried to get, really just mostly look at pictures of my house.
Okay, so that would be great, Hannah, if you could help us sort of identify that, because as part of the mitigation, I think that's where it came up, as part of the mitigation for the transit project. We may need to simply find places where we can add trees that would increase our canopy coverage. And they aren't gonna all be along the transit corridor. That brings up the next item on that list that I sent to you guys. This was a concern expressed by several of the councilors that the tree board maybe be more proactive in planning for how the mitigation for that transit project will be implemented. I'm not sure exactly what we do. I haven't felt like we have been kept particularly in the loop about the planning, and I don't know if it's because we haven't been actively trying to get the information, or whether it's because.
they haven't applied for permits yet.
Okay, so
And
maybe
so,
the
like,
information isn't there.
At least from Riley and I, like, our jobs within Lake Forest Park is work with the planning department, and so we don't really touch anything until we get an application.
Yeah, there were some ideas that were suggested by a couple of the city councilors about trying to plant between the street and the retaining wall, plant trees in that space. I didn't want to say anything, but that seemed like it's not a likely candidate for places for trees, because there's going to be so little space between that retaining wall and the actual street.
And if you make enough space for trees, you're gonna move the retaining wall farther back, and heading farther to people's yards, make the retaining wall even higher, so.
And then
On the other side of the road, I think.
on the other side of the road, there's going to be a sidewalk put in. And then there's a planting strip there, but that planting strip would be right next to the transit lane on the street. So if you plant trees, they're gonna get pulled back by buses for a side. Yeah. So part of the role of the trees is to knock that stuff down and to mitigate against it. But I think there's just the space issue is how close to the street can we plant trees? Maybe there are some types of trees that can be planted closer because they have a narrower canopy crown or something like that.
A lot of that is gonna depend on how much. Every extra foot you give the trees to grow is one extra foot on somebody's yard. And I think that's gonna be the balance somebody's gonna have to make, if we want to put a 5 foot wide strip between the street and sidewalk. That's 5 feet on somebody's yard, and that may be worth it, but that is a term of discussion.
My guess is that the spacing of the street, the curb, the sidewalk is going to be decisions about that are going to be made without any consideration for whether and how big plants can be planted in that strip.
I mean, there's trees along that, for example, 35th, later. There's a lot of trees there that are right next to the street. And they, at this point, they're tall enough that they don't need it by buses.
Yeah.
Now, what they look like, if they're planted, I don't know, but they are short of the street.
Yeah, and that actually, that extent, it looks nice, but this is going to be a much bigger, more heavily used street than for any other city street.
It sort of struck me that there's probably three different kinds of replacement trees we could put in. They will probably want to put in trees that are along the street. And they would probably suspect want to cover as much of their obligation to replant there as possible. They could probably also plant in the unheralded areas. But the third thing is to get some money from that for the program that we've been talking about off and on, so for the people who plant in their yards. And the website you sent around had a lot of nice things about not the least of which is they said, we have 200 trees to plant, 200 trees are gone. And since
With
those
the
trees,
shoreline neighborhood tree.
Yeah, I think it was
project,
shoreline, yeah.
They lost a lot of trees with the light rail line went up I-5 there. And they identified a corridor that extends back from the rail line, quite a ways on each side, which they have, that's their neighborhood that they're providing 3 trees to. It's not generally throughout shoreline, it's a corridor that parallels the light rail, but it extends back 2 or 3 lots away from light rail. It's not just the adjacent lots.
you could do that, but I think I'd rather see the trees put in our
I think so too. I think I'd rather
partially forested areas.
see if we can use that mitigation to help reestablish canopy in places that it's not dense snow.
And one of the things I like about there is the shoreline thing, the shore fields, Seattle, there's a Seattle base from there too.
Yeah.
It involves a certain amount of work as part of the arborist, I suppose, in Seattle. But if we say, we have 300 trees, we can say, okay, each one will take a half an hour of the arborist time, this require paying an arborist this much, and you could put the numbers down and actually keep them under control. So just say, we'll just give trees to everybody who wants them, everybody will get help from the arborist. Cost becomes incalculable. It would be at least possible to keep the cost under control, or at least predictable, or something like that. Because that's the third component of our replanning program. If assuming the city, assuming some transit is going to give us money.
Well, it sounds like from what a couple of the counselors said, they would like to see the city and us, the arm of the city that is likely to be involved with this, to take as much responsibility as possible for where and how the tree planting is done, rather than just letting the transit people put things where they want. And I think that for anything that's outside of the immediate corridor, that would probably start. That is for city or the tree board to take some responsibility on it.
Yeah. What they will probably would say is, hey, we will put $50,000 into this. It will be a lot cheaper for us to plant trees in the unheralded areas. In the unheralded areas, that will be put in the yards. So maybe we should, one of the councilors suggested we talk to the city arborist, to the South Transit arborist.
Yeah,
Maybe we should have him come to a tree board meeting and, most of the meeting to discuss this kind of issue with him.
yeah, that was one of the next thing I want to point out, that I forgot, do you remember what counselor had said that they had met with the Sun Transit arborist and suggested that that person they had a really good meeting with them, they seemed really attuned to the issues that our community has with respect to tree canopy and the value of trees, and suggested that that arborist would be likely willing to meet with us. We wanted to have someone come meet with us. But I don't remember who it was that suggested that. Not sure how. I guess I could use that city council email, right? Ask if someone has the connection to the transit arborist, on transit arborist.
I have this.
Oh, because you're probably the person who is taking most.
Maybe it's like football, I can reach out and get.
Okay, I think that would be good to do. I mean, it's probably not imminent that anything's happening if the permits aren't even through and so on, but
No, I know they are pushing to start, they want to start applying for permits, even if it's just their critical areas permit.
so earlier rather than later, I guess, would be good as far as just getting them, talking with them about some of these basic questions. If we have mitigation trees to plant or money for planting trees away from the border, is that something that they want to do, or is that something that they're gonna give us the money and we contract to have it done, or how?
I could provide a bit of context on this, if you're done discussing.
I'm happy to.
Yeah, so the first thing, it's been delayed, but the plan is at the April 13th city council meeting to introduce some revisions to the tree code, because there's a bit of ambiguity, like the tree code applies to individual homes. And so making sure that the tree code, that it's clear how it applies to a right, that it's clear that it does apply to a highway right of way, but just making it clear some of the details, that are trees replaced one for one? Is it based on canopy coverage? So the way that process will work is the city council will discuss it over a couple of meetings. Generally kind of figure out the sort of language they want. Then it has to go to the state. The state has, I forget which division of the state, but the state has to give its seal of approval. Then it comes back to the city, we have a public hearing about it, and then we can vote. So that's the general process. We're already in the midst of that process with the retaining wall code. That's not as germane here. So if that's introduced on April 13th, what I'm not sure about is when the city is looking to send it to the state. Will that be before or after your May 3rd meeting? If it's after May 3rd, then I think that could be a May agenda item for you to look over and provide any feedback you would like to. If it's before May 3rd, then you won't be having a meeting, but there's nothing stopping you as individuals from providing comments. And so you can't discuss them with each other offline or right, because that would be a serial meeting. But I believe it's perfectly legit for each of you as individual tree board members to send Hannah, Riley, myself, your individual comments. And then those can be compiled, just like any member of the public could comment on it. And they would be compiled and then passed along to the full city council. I think it's going to depend. I'll try to get some clarity about, are we looking to get that feedback by the April 27th meeting sent to the state, or would it be sometime mid-May? So that's kind of the roadmap. Do either of you have a feel for the timeline?
I know Steve is hoping sooner than later. And he did tell me that as soon as there's a draft that I can share with you, I can email it out. So
Would this pertain to rights of way, street rights of way throughout the city? We had a citizen commenter who was concerned about someone who removed 2 trees, large trees, on their property and didn't have to replace them because they were in the street right of way on the street in front of their house.
yeah.
And they had gone through the permit process as homeowners, but then there was sort of for some reason they didn't have to follow the rules otherwise.
Well, it's like,
the city.
because we don't have a right-of-way permit or right-of-way regulations for our trees, it's either a major or a minor permit. And we kind of classify the trees, the right-of-way, as the property homeowner's responsibility and part of their canopy coverage as of now. So if it was a major permit and they already met the tree canopy coverage goal for their parcel, and those 2 tree removals wouldn't cause them to drop below it, they would be required to replant as a condition of the permit, as our code is currently written.
But the fact that it was in the street right of way didn't make it a special case.
So yeah, big picture, either as individual tree board members or as the full tree board at your May 3rd meeting, providing some level of feedback to the council. The other thing, kind of echoing what you said, yeah, a number of council members are interested in tree board can help draft a tree replacement plan. And the gist that I seem to get was, let's say, I'm going to make up some numbers. Let's say Sound Transit removes 400 trees for this project. and they're able to plant 150 trees in the 522 corridor. And that leaves 250 trees which still need to be replanted somewhere. Then if the tree board can help to say, okay, we have 250 trees to plant, let's look around the city. You know, how many of those might go into unheralded areas that the city owns? Also, you know, cross-referencing it with the canopy map to say, oh, these corners of the city generally are lacking tree canopy to start with. So maybe let's emphasize the northwest, the northeast, the southwest corners of the city. So I think that council would appreciate if the tree board were to take the lead or to work with Sound Transit. I don't know if somebody was here, but if the tree board were to take a lead on kind of coming up with, oh, you have this many trees to plant, here's city-owned property, and here's areas where we could do outreach to a lot of the homeowners in the northwest corner to say, hey, would you like a tree? We will provide you, or Sound Transit will provide you with a tree. We'll provide you with information, well, that sort of thing. So I think that is how I kind of interpret that. That was sort of the feel of the council, that's how the tree board can help with this process. The first level is probably Sound Transit has to come up with their finalized plans, know exactly how many trees are being removed, how many could be replaced in the corridor, and then we'll have a feel for, you know, what's the magnitude of what still needs to be done. The other thing, a few members of the council were strongly in favor of having Sound Transit do the replantings rather than having Sound Transit pay the city money, just because it adds an extra step and the city is shorthanded right now. And so Sound Transit, it just cuts out an extra level. If Sound Transit is, you know, we can give them a plan and say, okay, you know, plant 5 trees in this property, but it's ultimately Sound Transit who is doing the work.
And so the goal is going to be to plant an explicit number of trees as a mitigation.
That may depend on exactly what the code looks like, whether it's going to be based on you need to plant X number of trees, or you need to provide X square feet of canopy coverage. I don't know which of those it'll be because I haven't seen the code myself.
I guess the point I was getting at is that if Sound Transit's going to do it, it's probably going to be an expensive job per tree planted. If the city has the money and we do something like hire the Youth Conservation Corps or whatever that group was that Julia had helped with the tree planting at the Maxwell Creek project, we could probably do plantings at a lower cost per tree because the labor costs would be more.
But Sound Transit's paying for it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If the goal is number of trees, let's let Sound Transit pay. But if the goal is that they have a certain amount of money as a mitigation for this, we could maybe get more trees in the ground.
I suspect based on how the code will be, it won't be you need to spend X million dollars on this. It'll be you took out this many trees, you need to put this many or this much canopy. So it'll be up to Sound Transit to find the money. So I mean, it'd be not saving them money. I'm sure they'd be appreciative, but I don't think that's
That's not our responsibility.
right. Ultimately, our responsibility is to figure out where these replacement trees are going down.
I think actually, in addition to what you just said, one of the challenges with the city of Lake Forest Park actually providing the program management for the planting of all of that trees is the bigger challenge. So having Sound Transit pay for Sound Transit to manage the program as opposed to having Sound Transit pay the city of Lake Forest Park to manage the program. That resource is that's a hire. That's a to be hired that Lake Forest Park may not want to take on the challenge of providing.
And Nick, I'm sure you're right about the cost being actually less. Some transit do this. They have crews that are professional tree planters. They probably can get in, cut out the blackberries, dig the holes, and go on to the, do 20 trees in this unheralded plot.
Yeah.
Finish up in the morning, go on to the next one. It may not be.
They're efficient.
They're efficient and they've got the equipment and they community as much as having volunteers planted. You think about volunteers. I think probably would be, John Lebo was talking to me at that meeting and saying he thought that would be cheaper to have town grants to do it. I think he may well be right.
And just so that I can kind of report back to the council next week, I don't want to, I'm not telling you what to do, but is the kind of the feel of the room that as a board, you would be interested in working to develop a replacement plan, you know, where in the city the trees could go, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think we will need help from staff with this because, you know, it's not, we don't have access to necessarily where the properties are or.
I just
anything like that.
yeah.
What's that?
I sent you
Oh, good.
the two different resources that you can look at.
And the tree board itself has some money that we could also add to, because for planting trees in neighborhoods particularly, tree board has so many in its own budget. We could add with South Branch again. I don't know what the, I'm not sure how many zeros we're talking about in this.
We have 20 minutes.
Well, we're about done with what I had on my agenda.
We've been talking for a couple of years now about using our tree board money to plant around some of these less
Yes.
forested areas, and maybe we could just sort of.
It's never been clear what sort of a budget we have, if we really have tree board money. That's something that I think we would like to know. And maybe Riley and if you could ask Steve or whoever is responsible, because there is supposed to be this fund that we can use for tree planting, educational purposes. But we've never really, at least as long as I've been on the board, never seen any dollar figure about what is available for this sort of. I know it's supposed to, money from tree code violations are supposed to go into the school. And there's some money from some other source that goes into this.
Do permit fees go there?
I don't know if permit fees go in there, but I think that there was some other source of funding that is the baseline money for that.
We were hearing that the big hoo-ha, people have cut down these huge
Yeah.
trees. Gonna be at least a 5-digit guy, which a fair number of trees.
Yeah.
Buy a fair number of trees for somebody else to plant.
Yeah. But I think also,
Their lawyer came in and paid today.
Sorry.
Their lawyer came in and paid today.
so what, you know what the settlement was then? Reveal that?
Yeah, public information, you know,
I don't know.
what's public?
I would imagine the total amount is probably public information. You know, some of the details of the settlement might be
Yeah,
confidential,
okay,
but they paid the city X $1,000. The city finances are public.
okay, great.
I'm pretty sure. And I'm
Yeah.
not getting this in trouble.
Yeah. So, the fine itself was 1,800. And they're doing, they did a voluntary correction agreement, so they're agreeing to pretty much replant the entire property. And then there was, an assessment of funds that was collected, and as long as the trees survive each year and they provide an arborist report showing that the trees are doing well, they will get X amount of that money back every year. And so that was a much larger number. So I won't share that one, but that's the 5-figure number.
Yeah, that, the number we heard initially was very,
Mhm.
So the fine is actually only,
The fine was much smaller.
but the mitigation dollar amount is, you said that is depending on success of the
Depending-
mitigation, it will be more or less money. And I think
And
Larry,
it's
you
a
had-
5-year.
that some of the money that's going into paying for the tree inventory was coming from the tree board fund, is that correct?
There is a tree fund.
No, I guess.
I think
not
it's-
tree board
I think it was the free board fund, but
fund.
Well, it was, I remember during the budget negotiation, this was a little bit nebulous, so I think it could be clarified a bit more. Again, speaking off the cuff for myself, there's a synergy that, hey, if Sound Transit's gonna be planting a whole bunch of trees, why dip into tree board money when we can just have Sound Transit to, you know, at least to start the process off? So it makes sense to kind of see, what's the magnitude of the sound transit deviation. And then use that to try to solve this lack of canopy problem as much as it can be.
Well, that was pretty much the notes from it for the notes that I had. Do you remember anything else from that?
I think those are the core, the main, interest in, informing homeowners, especially people who are just moving in, what the regulations are and the motivations for it. And then, sound transit.
Any reports or announcements? Larry, do you have a formal report? Okay. Anything else from Hannah or Riley? Do you think we should know about? Well, the next thing on the agenda before the adjournment is the agenda for next meeting. I would just say, if any of you have ideas, things you specifically want to have on the agenda, send it. I'll be communicating with Riley before next.
One thing that could be beneficial to put on there, and I know there'll be some involvement from my end on this, but for the general tree list, I know we've talked about updating that. But one of the columns we would like to see on there is if it's an appropriate street tree. So that we can kind of, as we're figuring out language for right-of-way trees, giving people, these are good street trees that don't have really aggressive roots that are going to damage sidewalks and roadways. And just putting some of those specs on there of what the city would approve for street trees.
That's interesting.
And so I know
You know
the city,
source of information?
the city of Shoreline has a pretty extensive list. That I know the Department of Natural Resources helps them put together. I think back in 2016, Seattle has a list. So there's resources we can kind of pull from.
Any other word on, any more word on the roundabout on the corner of 40th and Ballinger? I was shocked, I think, when you said that there were gonna be something like 4 dozen trees. Project.
There will be, that was another project where they did mention that based on the location of the retaining wall, it might be possible to put a line of small trees between the roundabout and the retaining wall. It'll depend on the exact design. I think the hope is maybe, later this year, start, finish the planning mid this year, maybe start construction late 23, early 24.
That's not, there's not much slope right in there. I don't know where the retaining wall would be. That on the north side?
It would be in kind of like the northeast. Actually, I toured it, a couple of the council members did. There's some. The obvious location for the roundabout is not actually, doesn't actually work because it gets into utilities, and so basically the roundabout has to jog a bit to the northeast, which is the steep side, because moving it south, it would either interfere with the turning radius for large trucks, or there'd be other issues. So it does need to move into the steep side, which is why there will need to be there.
I think it's going to have to move into private property too.
Yeah, so so there is that aspect as well.
But no homes that will have to be
Nothing, because I mean, it would be kind of like the Sound Transit where, okay, the city would need to negotiate, like the last 5 feet of your yard, last 10 feet or that sort of thing.
That vicinity is mostly big lots. Houses set way back in the street. At least a couple of lots.
Middle of the tennis court, it looks like, I think we're looking at the right place.
Yeah, and what might seem logical on a map doesn't actually work when you get into like what is highway design mandates for, what's the turning radius, that sort of, like when you get into those details, the only place to go is northeast. Yeah, because the council had the same question, why are we doing the hard thing? Why can't we do the easy thing? But the easy thing would actually be problematic.
Why is there?
It's just too difficult an intersection. They want to put it around about it. You said stop transit, but they here.
Oh, no, I was saying analogous to Sound Transit.
Analogous transit. Okay.
Yeah.
I live down 40th place. I live on 40th place. Right. There, sometimes you sit there for 10 minutes to get on the Ballinger because there's such a steady stream of traffic. Okay, do I hear a move to adjourn? Okay, a second. All in favor of adjourn?
Oh, I actually have a quick question.
Okay, sorry, Andy, go ahead.
Sorry, I was waiting for a second there. No, I had just, I'm happy to do this next time, but I had pulled together some questions about heritage trees. That we didn't quite get to, so that's fine, but I just wanted to let you know that that is here for next time, so
Put that on the agenda for next time.
perfect. All right, that's it, thank you.
Mike B, yeah, I think before you came, Mike B said that he thinks that there is a binder of photographs of heritage trees somewhere in City Hall.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
There is.
Yeah. So, Hannah or Riley, could one of you guys sort of ask around and see if anybody knows about?
I'll ask Jessica. Anyone knows, she'll know where it is.
There's
right, then.
also a large collection of photographs of trees that are interesting in those walks. So if you look in the PDFs that are have the city walks, tree walks, yeah, there's a lot of tree images in there.
Yes, my photos.
Right, I was gonna say.
Okay, thank you all.
The answer to your question about the council member that met with the arborist for sound transit was former deputy mayor Castover, and the mayor met with them and suggested that they come to a tree board meeting.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. And the city tree account is municipal code 16.14.120 for those that want to look up about that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.